Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to be here. This is a huge honor for me, and it's a great pleasure to spend this. As Michelle said, if an informed woman is an empowered woman, I would like to add that an informed man is an empathetic man. As an older brother of two sisters and the son of a hard-working single mother, I'm here today, yes, as a politician, but also as an empathetic man. To reference Stacey Solomon's remarks that were made several months ago at a rally at the governor's mansion, I believe that women are both intelligent enough to make their own health care decisions and smart enough to vote.
Yes!
Don't close your eyes, and we won't close our mouths.
Yeah!
Such legislation as HB 1077 has no place in today's political agenda. These are sensitive matters that concern a woman and her physician and should be discussed in confidence in the privacy of a doctor's office.
Yes!
While my opponent supported the passage of this horrific bill, which was sponsored by her boss, former Representative Kurt Schroeder, whose seat I'm running for today. During my tenure as mayor, I've supported our schools, our economy, and the preservation of our land.
Yes!
These are the issues that desperately need the support of legislators today. According to recent studies, women have surpassed men in the pursuit of bachelor's degrees. Our multitasking mothers, sisters, in my case girlfriends and cousins, need our support to continue to pursue opportunities for higher education and at an affordable price. State-backed schools facilitate this opportunity for many, like myself, who attended institutions like Westchester University under Senator and Professor Andy Dinniman, in order to be able to take their brother to practice, to take their brother or practice to their sister to school in between classes. In order to ease the financial burden on their single mother, who's already working 2 jobs to pay the bills. It is the state's responsibility to adequately fund our schools. Education is the keystone that will drive our progress, particularly when families choose to move to places like Euclid or Cowan in order to put their children through a nationally ranked downtown school district. I am part of a product of a different generation, a generation of equality.
Yes!
I'm proud to be able to tell my children and my grandchildren that our president proposed legislation to make healthcare affordable to all and facilitate age-appropriate preventative healthcare services like life-saving screenings for HIV and other diseases, annual well women visits and counseling services for victims of domestic violence and abuse free of charge.
Woo!
To quote our president, making our economy work means making sure it works for everybody.
Yes!
Legislation like the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act is a testament to his words and our resources for women's health care or public education. It said, I want to make these services accessible and affordable. These are the tools in your ticket to advance the quality of your life and that of your family. This is what it looks like when our economy works. Healthy, smart, successful women, our lawyers, our doctors, our teachers, our mothers, are you. Thank you very much.
These people have been talking to me about education, healthcare, specifically women's issues, and the economy. All of these issues interact with each other. You can't separate one from the other, and Tom Killian, who I'm voting against, has a terrible record on all of them. He consistently votes with the governor's very conservative agenda. And when he spends time voting 33 times on bills that affect women's health care rights, that's time he's not spending looking for ways to fund our public education or looking for ways to support the small businesses that would bring jobs to Chester County and Delaware County. So I want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to ask you for your help, not just for me, but for all of the candidates at the State House level and the congressional level. I know a lot of you want to be involved at the presidential level, but believe me, for every person you talk to who you convince to vote for me, or for Josh, or for Brett, for any of the people out there, for Ariana, Pat, that person is going to vote up the ballot and vote for our pro-choice president, believe me. So when you help the grassroots, you're helping the president too. So thank you all very much and good luck today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you all for coming. This is so important. This election year is so important. Like Michelle said, my name is George Beatty, and I'm the Democratic candidate for Congress in the 7th Congressional District, which includes Delaware County, Montgomery County, Chester County, Berks County, and Lancaster County. They gerrymandered this district to try to rig the election, just like they passed voter ID to try to rig the election. But it will not work because we're going to win this year. 2 years ago, just 2 short years ago, my opponent, Pat Meehan, ran for Congress for the very first time. And he told all of us that he would be a moderate on the issues. Today, we know that nothing could be further from the truth. 2 years ago, Tea Party Pat Meehan promised us that he would never vote to privatize Medicare. And as soon as he got elected, he voted to privatize Medicare with Paul Ryan. 2 years ago, he told us that he would be a moderate voice on the environment. But as soon as he got elected, he racked up a voting record, which is shameful. 17% voting record on the League of Conservation Voters scorecard. He's anti-environment Tea Party Republican. And more importantly, 2 years ago, he told us he would be a moderate on women's issues, but he's proven to be nothing near that. In terms of protecting the rights of women, he said he would be moderate, but since then he has taken every opportunity to undermine women's health care and women's reproductive rights. He voted to allow hospitals to deny life-saving treatment to women. He voted to defund Planned Parenthood. He voted to take funding away for mammograms and basic gynecological testing and screening. This guy is nothing at all like a moderate, like he said he would be. He is a hardcore, far-right extremist and an anti-woman zealot in our Congress. He must be removed from our Congress, and he will be this year. Some of you may have heard this anecdote before, but I'm going to tell it again for those who haven't. Because when you get in your car to go home after this rally, feel good about being here. Feel good about being part of this system, because this is our voice. This is our chance to be heard. This is our chance to make a difference. And when you put your car in drive to go home, I want you to look at your transmission. It's going to say D. And you're going to go forward when you put that transmission in D. Forward. Now, if you want to go backward to the dark ages, if you want to go backward to the back alleys, if you want to go backward before Roe versus Wade, you'll put your car in reverse with that big R. So remember, the big D on Election Day. Let's win this thing. We're all in it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Ariana Strader. I'm an Iraq War veteran, a small business owner, and a mom of 2 amazing kids. And if we are ever going to change the way Washington works, we have got to change who we send there. I grew up the youngest of 10 kids, to a mom that worked as a waitress, oftentimes 3 jobs just to put a roof over our heads. We did not have access to health care. We did not have access to going to the doctor. So for us, it meant gargling with hot salt water and taking vitamin C when we got sick. And at 16, when I needed my first annual exam, my mom took me to Planned Parenthood. They did not judge us because we did not have money. We paid what we could, and I was able to receive the treatment that I needed. They gave me the education on how to check myself for breast cancer, and they gave me birth control, access to birth control. 2 months after 9/11, I enlisted in the United States Army. I worked very, very hard in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And when I got promoted to Specialist E4, and the man next to me got promoted to Specialist E4, we were paid the same. Who knew that the military was a proving ground for equal pay? I put my life on the line to defend our nation. I didn't fight to protect the freedom of a few. I fought for the freedoms of all Americans. That includes the freedom for equal pay, the freedom from discrimination, and women's freedom for their reproductive rights. Even though I'm not standing here in uniform, I feel like I am still fighting. All right. Today in Washington, we have had the most legislation proposed against women's rights. Since January, congressmen like Joe Pitts have proposed 50 5 bills that carry with it the agenda that undermines women's health, rolls back our rights, and defunds programs and institutions that provide support for the most in need. That averages to more than 1 per week. And if Mitt Romney wins the White House, and his vice presidential selection of Paul Ryan will guarantee the passage of those 55 bills, and literally set us back decades. We can never let the fears of the narrow-minded send us down a narrow road that is unjust, unfair, and built out of an unwillingness for change. The experiences in my life have shaped the woman I am today, and just like all of you, I know that many of you feel like you have been fighting this fight your whole life. Kate, I know you feel that way. So now it is time for my generation, a new generation, to join the fight, because we cannot allow the hard work of those of you who have come before us to go and be destroyed. I may only be 5'2", but let me reassure you that reinforcements have arrived.
Chester County, the home of the Women's Rights Coalition. I want to go to Harrisburg. It's a one-party town. It's extremist. It's utterly divorced from reality. And that shows so well in the budget, in the voter ID bill, and worst of all, House Bill 1077, cynically referred to as a woman's right to know. The government has no right to know. That's what the name of that bill should be. If I can quote for a moment from one of Chester County's more conservative newspapers about 1077, quote, "This House bill is spectacularly wrong, viciously cruel, and absolutely unnecessary." The fact that it exists at all is proof that its sponsors, among them State Representative John Lawrence, who I'm running against, they're pushing a pro-life agenda in the guise of a woman's right to know. End quote. The fact that these words come from the Chester County Press is all you need to know how far outside the mainstream my opponent John Lawrence is. This war against women isn't just 1077, it's a wider conflict across this nation. In August, the state of Texas announced that they will cut all state funding to Planned Parenthood. That plan is going to cut services to 50,000 poor women, women who would have received cancer screenings, mammograms, well-woman exams, and birth control. In the end, this decision in Texas is an example of extremism trumping common sense. If that's not scary enough, Darrell Metcalf introduced that same Texas bill into Harrisburg this past May. If that doesn't get you motivated for November 6th, I don't think anything else is going to. As my friend Jim said, I've got your vote. All the Democrats here today, we've got your vote. Now I've got to take you a little bit out of your comfort zone. And I know what that's like since February. You're going to have to take a sign on your lawn. I'm going to ask you to write a letter to the editor. Phone calls and canvassing. Talking to people, knocking on doors of strangers and trying to bring them along. So I can't thank you enough for coming out today. And as Michelle Vaughn quoted recently in the Philadelphia Inquirer, women are under attack in Pennsylvania. It is time to fight back. Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much for coming here this afternoon, and I thank the women of their coalition for doing a great job in speaking out against the rights of women. I was looking at their little pamphlet here. and it says if we don't do something now, all the strides for women's rights that have been made over the past several decades could be lost. And we cannot allow that to happen. I heard some say that they're taking us back to the 80s or the 50s. They're trying to take us back to biblical times where women have no voice at all. And we cannot and will not allow that to happen in November. When women vote, women win. You heard it said we have over 50% of the electoral. So when we vote, we can win. There are 10 out of 50 senators in the state legislature. 5 of them are Democrats, 5 of them are Republicans. That's not enough representation in the state Senate for women. You can tell that by the legislations that they have been passing. This law where Corbyn says to just turn your head is the most insensitive thing an elected official could say, along with the rest of the line, along the lines of the other Republican voters, Republican candidates, or Republican legislators that have been talking about. Women need to vote. We need to get every woman out to vote. Your vote does count. They try to tell us our vote doesn't count with this voter ID suppression law. That's the key to suppressing our law, suppressing our vote. Women have the majority of votes, so they're trying to suppress that vote. And we cannot and will not allow that to happen on November 6th. This voter suppression ID law is a violation of our Constitution. And when you have elected officials that are sitting in office and clearly violate our Constitution, you know they have no regard for the people factor in our legislation. We need to put women in our legislation. We need to put women in Harrisburg. We need to put more women in Washington that can speak for us and not clearly just violate our rights as they see fit. When women vote, women win. Women have said enough. You heard from all the testimonies and the speakers that are up here how long women have been being violated and their rights being violated. Women are saying enough. And when women say enough, women get tough. So let's get tough on November 6th, get our women into the legislature, and keep women's rights a women's rights.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I want today to help you understand, if you can, that you are part of a tremendous tradition that's here in Chester County. What I'm talking about is this. Within 5 blocks from us, women gathered in 1854, before the Seneca Convention, gathered at what is now the Chester County Historical Society. And as you walk away, go and look at the plaque. Because the questions we ask today were similar to the questions of 1854. Women came out to demand their rights and fought hard. If you think of this county, you'll realize that the great civil rights leader, Frederick Douglass, gave his last speech here in Westchester in the 1890s. It was a speech against lynching. It was a speech against violence. If you look in this area, you will see that you're part of a tradition in which when Richard Allen and Absalom Jones fought the discrimination of the Methodist Church in Philadelphia to form the AME Church, one of the first churches formed was here in Westchester and exists still today. When you understand the issue of women's rights and civil rights, you will understand that it was here in this county, especially in southern Chester County, where the Hicksite movement of the Quakers came together to declare their clear opposition to slavery and their clear support of the Underground Railroad. What I'm trying to say to you is you are part of a tradition in this county. You are part of a tradition, a progressive tradition nationally. And if you understand this history, and if you see and begin to study the politics of our nation, you will see that this struggle that started with the Declaration of Independence and this struggle continues today. You see, when the Declaration of Independence was declared, it only referred to white men. It did not refer to the equal rights of women. It did not refer to the equal rights of people of color. But I can assure you, at the very moment that it was declared, that there were women, there were people of color who understood it includes them as well, right? And they have struggled, they have worked to make it a reality. But also understand that as you work to make this a reality, and throughout our history, there have been those who have worked to take back what had been won. This is a struggle about what America is all about. Those of us who are committed to expanding the notion of basic and fundamental rights versus those who want to always go back to the way it was. Now, understand also that every time there's progress, there's also the reaction. Remember, after the Civil War, we had the period of Reconstruction, where there were African-American congressmen and senators for the southern states, only to be followed by a period of repression and increased segregation. The same thing is occurring in terms of women's rights today. The same thing is occurring in terms of the protection of our environment today. But the only good news in all this is the following. Every time we've been set back, we've come together and united and gone forward again. Remember that the Gilded Age of the 1890s was followed by the populist movement and the progressive movement. And we still today have the rewards of that era. Remember that the immigration restriction and the difficulties of the 20s and of the recession and depression were followed by the New Deal. And so today, if you stay in there, you work hard, we create a party which stays in line with this historic tradition of fighting to make sure that everyone shares and is part of what our own Declaration of Independence says. We will succeed because just as the progressive era followed the Gilded Age, so too today will a new era, one which we create together, follow this period of difficulty and repression of fundamental rights. Now, finally, thank you. Let me try to put this together in another way for you. As we look back on these movements, we see that there are two things that are necessary to succeed. And you know, I'm an historian by profession, and this has been an interest of mine. Social movements, movements for change. What is it in art history? I might say that, thank God, by the way, that this tradition has been in our country. Because you see, in moments of difficulty, economic difficulty, there are always two responses. There are those who want to save their own asses, their own rear ends, and say to hell with everyone else. And there are those who understand, as we do, that we're in it together, that all ships can rise together, and that's what we stand for as Democrats, isn't it? Finally, let me say this. When we look back at these movements, we see two things have happened. The bell, who does the bell toll for? It'll toll for us, right? If we stay together. Finally, we know that there's two things that we have to do. These protests, these rallies are vital. But we also have to engage our brothers and sisters in a dialogue. Let me share with you a result of polling that I've done related to my own campaign. What we have found in Chester County is 11% consider themselves liberal, 11% consider themselves conservative, 35% consider themselves middle of the road, 12% lean towards liberal, 18% lean towards conservative. You need 51% to win, right? So what do, you protest. You show what you stand for, but you also engage in a dialogue using terms and words that, just as you talk to your neighbors and friends, talk to your neighbors and friends, get them in a dialogue on basic rights. I can tell you that women in this county will vote for us will support us, but we have to talk to them. We have to engage in that dialogue. So we have great candidates for the House, great candidates for Congress. I believe we can all win on Election Day. We'll win, again, if we understand we're part of a tradition, an historic tradition that helps define what this nation is and what this county is. But we win with both protest and through an active dialogue and engagement. Let me end in the words of Jane Weldon Johnson, a very famous civil rights leader who also came here to Westchester. And Johnson said in a very famous song, "Facing the sun of a new day begun, march on, till victory is won." Would you say it with me? It's been said many times right at this courthouse since the late 19th century. Come on, facing the sun of a new day begun. March on, till victory is won. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for sticking around. So the big picture. Why are we here today? Big picture. This is not the Republican Party of your father. This is not the Republican Party of your grandfather. These folks are extreme. They have moved so far to the right that we can't even recognize their principles, and it's time to elect new people. As Michelle said, I'm a Spring City Council member. We had the misfortune of electing a Tea Party member to council last year. How about that? Was not pretty. So his name's also Mike. Mike wants to eliminate the EPA. Mike thinks that President Obama is a tyrant. But you know what? Mike is perfectly okay with the Republican legislature telling women what to do with their bodies. He's perfectly okay with that. That's not the government we need or deserve in Harrisburg. Like Rob, I was raised in a Catholic family as well. I understand the arguments on their side. I respect their values. What I disagree with is when hardcore conservatives take their religious beliefs and they want to transfer them into legislation. That's wrong. And that's why Tim Hennessy must go in Harrisburg. Speaking of Tim Hennessy, I had the privilege to interview the man back in 2008 when he ran for State House. And we asked him, "Tim, what have you done over the course of 16 years in Harrisburg? What are you good at?" He said, "I'm good at rewriting other people's bills." Wow, that's a big accomplishment over 2 decades, Tim. He also told me after he won, he survived the Obama wave. Well, guess what, Tim? You're not going to survive the wave this time. If you do, you're going to succumb to the Hayes undertow, I'm calling it. The Hayes undertow of 2012. Tim, if you've seen him, he's a rather large guy. He was at Valley Township Day last month, changing shirts over by his Jeep. And I have a message for you all to send to Tim. And that's tell the Jelly Belly to keep his hands away from your belly. Thank you. I hope to be your next representative in the 26th.